There was a moment, you probably remember it specifically, at a birthday party, at the park, at a play date that was supposed to be easy. The other kids were running, negotiating, crashing into each other the way toddlers do, and your child was at the edge of it, watching. Not sad exactly, not visibly distressed, just outside. And when another child came close, something happened. A stiffening, a retreat, a cry that came from somewhere you couldn't quite locate. And on the way home, with him asleep in the back seat, you found yourself looking in the rearview mirror, thinking the thought you didn't want to think, did I do something that caused this? I need to tell you something before we go any further. The answer to that question is more complicated and more hopeful than you think. Because what you saw at that party was not a character flaw. It was not shyness in the permanent sense, not a social disorder, not evidence that something is broken in the way your child is wired. What you saw was a nervous system that had been trained for one kind of world encountering a different one. And once you understand what that means, specifically, neurologically, in terms of what was actually inside that small brain, the path forward becomes something you can actually see. So stay with me. Because the link between screen time and social struggle is not the one that gets talked about. And the one that doesn't get talked about is the one that actually matters. Here is the piece that almost no one is discussing. The problem with too much screen time for toddlers is not what the screen delivers. It's what it replaces. Every minute your toddler spends in front of a screen is a minute he is not spending in front of an unpredictable human face. And it is exactly that unpredictability, the expression that shifts without warning, the tone that changes mid-sentence, the eyes that look away and come back, that trains the developing nervous system to read other people. Screens are not too stimulating. They are too predictable. And a brain calibrated on predictability struggles profoundly when the real social world arrives, because the real social world is made of almost nothing but unpredictability. Your toddler's brain is in the most neuroplastic period of its entire life. Between 1 and 3 years old, the circuits that will eventually handle emotional recognition, social attunement, and the capacity to repair a relationship after conflict are being built in real time through repetition, through exposure, through thousands of micro interactions that most parents never notice are happening. A glance, a shift in tone, a face that was happy and is now uncertain. These moments are not background noise. They are the curriculum. And they only exist in the presence of other humans in real time with all the mess and inconsistency that entails. What screens deliver, even the best, slowest, most carefully produced educational content, is interaction without ambiguity. The characters follow scripts. The pacing is controlled. The emotional signals are clear, consistent, and resolved within minutes. A toddler can watch hundreds of hours of this and absorb none of the skill that the real social world is going to demand of him. Because that skill is not built through observation of predictable patterns. It is built through the repeated experience of navigating unpredictable ones. Tell me in the comments, have you noticed a difference in how your toddler handles social situations compared to time spent with screens? I want to hear what you've been observing. Now, I need to address the thing most parents reach for when this conversation comes up. The thing that sounds like reassurance, but is actually a different kind of problem. It sounds like this. But he only watches educational content. And I want to be honest with you about what that solves and what it doesn't. Educational content solves the question of what your toddler is absorbing while he watches. It does not solve the question of what he is not practicing while he watches. No screen, regardless of how slow the pacing, how rich the language, how thoughtfully designed the characters, teaches a toddler how to read a micro-expression in real time, how to adjust his tone when a friend becomes upset, how to re-enter a game after a conflict has broken it, how to tolerate the moment when another child does something unexpected and the interaction has to be rebuilt from scratch. These are skills of presence, and presence cannot be learned in the absence of another presence. The toddler who struggles socially after heavy screen exposure is not struggling because of what he watched. He is struggling because his nervous system did not accumulate enough hours of practice at the specific thing the social world requires: reading, adjusting to, and recovering from the behavior of other humans who do not follow a script. Here is what the developmental research shows about what actually builds social competence in toddlers. It is not structured play. It is not adult-guided interaction. It is not even particularly warm or attentive parenting, as counterintuitive as that sounds. It is specifically unpredictable peer interaction, the chaotic, negotiation-heavy, frequently collapsing play between toddlers who are equally unskilled, equally impulsive, and equally likely to change the direction of the game without warning. The mess of toddler-to-toddler interaction is not a problem to be managed. It is the exact curriculum the developing brain needs, because it is the only environment that consistently delivers the things screens cannot: genuine social ambiguity that must be navigated in real time. Now, if everything I just explained resonated with you, I need to tell you something important, because understanding your toddler's brain is only half the equation. The other half is what happens inside your nervous system when the meltdown starts. Most parents I talk to say the same thing: I know what to do. I just can't do it when it's actually happening. That's not a willpower problem. That's a sequencing problem, and nobody has ever given you the right tool in the right order for the right moment. I wrote the reset cycle specifically for that gap. It's not another gentle parenting theory. It's a 3-step biological system: regulate, break, repair, built for the real conditions of your life. The 7 a.m. meltdown, the supermarket floor, the moment after you already yelled. It works before the crisis, after the explosion, and in the hours that follow. The link is in the description. And if there's one thing you take away from this video today, take that. So what does this actually look like in practice, and what can you do starting now that isn't about guilt and isn't about throwing the tablet in the trash? The first thing is the simplest and the most uncomfortable. Imperfect human interaction is more valuable than perfect screen content. 20 minutes of a play date that ends in tears and conflict is delivering more social neurological practice than 2 hours of the most carefully produced educational programming available. That does not mean play dates need to be long or frequent or organized. It means that anytime your toddler is in the presence of another unpredictable human, a sibling, a cousin, a child at the park he's never met, that time is doing something no screen can replicate: protect it, prioritize it, and resist the instinct to smooth it over when it gets messy, because the mess is the point. The second thing is about your own face. Before screens, before peer interaction, before any structured intervention, the first teacher of social reading for every toddler is the face of the person who cares for them most. Not a calm, controlled performance of presence face. A real one, distracted sometimes, tired sometimes, surprised, amused, uncertain. A face that changes in ways the toddler didn't predict and has to figure out. If screen time has been filling hours that would otherwise have been spent in unstructured proximity to you, not structured play, not educational activities, just being near a human face that moves, the most direct thing you can do is reclaim some of those hours. Not perfectly, not with the program. just by being present in a room, living your life with your face visible and unscripted. The third thing is what you do with the guilt. And I want to be specific here because the guilt is not useful and it is also not the whole story. You did not damage your child by using a screen when you needed one. You made the calculation that every parent makes when the alternative is a level of exhaustion or stress that produces its own consequences. That calculation was not wrong. What you have now that you didn't have before is a more complete picture of what's actually at stake. And that picture comes with a map, not a verdict. If this is landing in a way that's changing how you see the screen time question, not with more guilt, but with more clarity, subscribe. Because every week we go one layer deeper into what your toddler's brain actually needs and why. You shouldn't have to keep navigating this without the science. What I want you to leave with is not a screen time limit. Limits without understanding are just rules, and rules without understanding don't survive the afternoon when everything is falling apart and the tablet is right there. What I want you to leave with is the actual mechanism. The reason the social struggle happens is not that your child watched too much. It's that his nervous system didn't get enough hours of practice at the one thing screens cannot deliver, the experience of another person who doesn't follow a script, whose face changes in ways that must be read, whose behavior requires real-time adjustment and repair. That practice can start today. It doesn't require a perfect plan. It requires other humans, some unstructured time, and the permission to let it be messy. Before you go, tell me in the comments, what does social interaction look like for your toddler right now? Does he seek it out or avoid it? Because next week, we're going into exactly how to rebuild social tolerance in toddlers who have become avoidant and what the first steps actually look like. That one is going to be practical. You didn't ruin your child because you let him watch a screen. You did what you could with what you had. And now that you understand what was happening underneath, you have something you didn't have before, the map of what to do next. Not a perfect map, but a real one. And that is enough to start.